What's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front brake pads on a 2012 Nissan Altima. So the first thing I like to do is compress the caliper piston back inside the caliper itself. The easiest way to do that is just grab yourself a flathead screwdriver, and if you put it through this little window right here, you can pry between the caliper and the pad, and that will push that caliper back in slowly. You can see that moving slowly. But as you do this, or before you do this, we want to make sure to take a look at the master cylinder to verify the fluid level. Okay, so before we press that caliper piston back in, I like to take the lid off the master cylinder, and you can see we're already pretty high on brake fluid level here. So pressing those caliper pistons back in might overflow this. And one thing we could do is either grab a turkey baster and just suck some of that brake fluid out, or you can just roll up a paper towel and let it wick some of that fluid out of there, and that's probably what I'm going to do on this one. I'm just going to kind of plant this down in there and let that suck some of that fluid up out. That way it'll be less likely to overflow while we're pushing in the brake caliper. Now we can use a screwdriver, wedge it in between the pad and the rotor here, or between the body of the caliper, and slowly pry that caliper piston back in. Sometimes you have to reposition the screwdriver a couple times, but the idea is just to get in between the body of the caliper and either the rotor or the edge of the pad. Okay, now that what I showed you there with the screwdriver is one method of pushing that caliper piston back in. The other method is to use this Caliper Compression tool, and I'll show you how that works here in just a minute. But before we can use that tool, we need to take off this lower bolt right here, which is a 14 millimeter. That's a bolt that goes into the slide pin. That's what that looks like. And then taking out that bottom bolt allows us to pivot the caliper upwards and have access to the brake pads. So now we can pull out the old brake pads and grab one of those brake pads, and you can see right here where it's shiny. This one was scratching the rotor a little bit, letting the owner know that it was time to get these changed. But we can use that old brake pad up here on the caliper now, and using this caliper compression tool, we can spin that in and push this caliper piston the rest of the way back in. If you don't have this tool, you can also use a C-clamp, or you can spend a little bit more time and make sure that if you use the screwdriver method that you're able to pry it all the way back in, or at least far enough to get the new pads on. And again, I've already got a paper towel up in the master cylinder catching that additional fluid so we don't make a big mess. And right about there is good. Take that off. Okay, now this particular brake pad kit also came with these new retainer clips. Sometimes I don't change these, and a lot of times if you've seen some of my videos, I don't take these out. Sometimes the new ones don't want to fit in there too well. I know in some areas these probably get pretty beat up, but these ones aren't too bad, but we are going to go ahead and change them on this one. So there's the lower one. They just snap down into place just like that. Same with the top one here. Just kind of get in there and pry that out. That's what that looks like. Just a little bit of corrosion, not too bad, but as long as we can get these ones in there and they seat well, that's the main thing. Before I put the new pad in, I like to put a little bit of this brake grease on the back of it and at the little ends here, and that helps it to move in and out properly. You'll also notice this little noisemaker or squealer here, so we're going to make sure that we line those up just like they had them on the old pad. So this is the old outward pad, and that's what we're going to replace it with, this one right here. So just a little dab or two of this grease on the back. Doesn't take much just to get a nice thin layer, and that seems to really quiet the pads down. But if we get some on the ends here as well, that will also help the pad move in and out and slide in and out of these little retaining clips as it should. Okay, so putting the new pads back in, I just wanted to make a note. This squealer, or this little noisemaker here, the hole here is also where this little part of the spring or the retainer clip goes. So I didn't realize that. I had already put this back together, and so I've just taken this back off. So just kind of hook onto that and press that in while you push the pad in and line it up. And that just keeps a little bit of outward pressure on the brake pad. You can see like that, it's tucked in there so that they're not dragging on the rotor. Same thing for the inboard pad. Again, just match up that squealer, make sure that it's the right orientation, and put a little bit of grease on the back. Make sure you don't get any of this grease on the new pad material or on the rotor. So just be very careful to just get the ends and this little squealer part here that also sits inside that shim. Same thing on the inside, it's got this same spring. Just make sure that we get that tucked in to this piece right here. There we go. That's it. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of that brake grease around this boot as well, which will kind of help protect that, help keep it pliable. Those do tend to crack over time, and that might help prevent that from happening. Now, before I drop the caliper back in place, I'm also going to pull out these slide pins and take a look. And it's got this rubber boot, but you can just pull that straight out. And then we'll just take that slide pin and clean that up. Some of that grease gets old, and sometimes it will get gummed up in there. This one wasn't terrible, but not a bad thing to pull that out. And then we'll just put just a little bit of this new grease on there. This is that sil-glyde brake grease. I'll put a link in the description where you can pick up some of that grease as well. But just like that, and then we can just pop that slide pin right back in. So this has got a boot right here that snaps into the inside of this slide pin or this caliper bracket. So we just need to pull on that and kind of twist it until it snaps into place. I just kind of use the edge of the screwdriver to pull on that boot and pull it back in. I'm going to do the same thing with the upper slide pin here. I'm just going to pull that out. Even though I don't have the upper caliper bolt off, that will just pop out. And do the same thing. I'm just going to clean off that slide pin, put some new grease on there just to make sure that those are moving properly and smoothly. And then we'll do the same thing, pull that back in. See if we can't get that boot to go in by pulling on the edge of that with a screwdriver. Sometimes these boots go on the outside of the caliper bracket. This one gets tucked in on the inside. There we go. There we go. Now that's tucked in, ready to go. So now we can put the caliper back down over the new brake pads, and we have to pull on that lower slide pin to get that to line up. Now we can put that lower caliper bolt back in. And we can tighten that to spec. Sometimes these slide pins will spin and you can throw a wrench on there. A lot of times they won't though. And then just double check your manual on the torque spec on this. If I get a chance, I'll look that up and put that in the description as well. And that's pretty much everything. Just make sure before you drive off to step on the brake pedal once or twice, which will push the caliper piston back out and seat those pads properly against the rotor. And then make sure that you top off the master cylinder as well with the appropriate level of brake fluid. Hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe if you did. Again, I will put a link in the description to the products mentioned in the video. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.